Good morning and welcome to another wonderful day. It's not as rainy as it was yesterday, thankfully. So we'll definitely keep that going. I look forward to spending some more time with you guys today on what we are discussing. As soon as I can find my video, is here we go. Nice uncomfortable pause. Okay, I got you on my phone so I can see your questions. Um, so welcome. Um, so over the last couple weeks, we have been talking about interview basics, how to dress, how to prepare, when to show up, what to do in case there's an emergency, how to conduct yourself during the interview, and how to leave on a strong note. Well, today we are going to discuss uh, disclosure, which, if you're unfamiliar with disclosure, it is when you have something um, personal, like you might have a disability, or you might have a mental illness, or you might need certain job adaptations, and you want to decide whether to disclose this during the job interview, um, but you don't know whether to bring it up or not. Because in today's day and age, a lot of us are judged by physical appearance, how we conduct ourselves, things we say, the stigmas behind mental illness and behavioral health. And when you're dealing with all this stuff, your day is hard enough as it is to try and bring some sense of normalcy to it and be a productive member of society. But when you have others judging you on this and not really looking for any positive moves or things you may have done in your life, it kind of makes it difficult whether you want to do that or not. So we're going to talk about that today. Now, um, why don't we just go right into that? Let me pull up my other screen here. Don't have a PowerPoint for you today, just because I felt that this conversation kind of warranted kind of face to face. Kind of gives it a little bit more open. Plus, if you need to ask some questions, we can do that. So, only you can decide whether or not to disclose a disability to an employer, and whether how much to tell them or not, whether you have any kind of mental illness or psychiatric disability. Um, it's tough, especially here in Ohio. Ohio is an at-will employment state. What is at-will employment? It means that employers can hire and fire you without any reason whatsoever. They view employment as at will. They are giving you a job, and that should be enough for you. So, granted, there are lawsuits people can bring about, age discrimination, disability discrimination, race discrimination, but it's very hard to prove in the court of laws because of the at will employment. But you can decide how much you want to disclose, and there's certain things you would need to disclose. So, going from that, sometimes telling your boss about your diagnosis is the only way to protect your legal right to any accommodations that you might need to keep a job. So, say you have a job already and you need a job adaptation, something to help you out. Say you suffer from fatigue and you're in a position where you're required to stand all day. You need a chair, and there are chairs that can be purchased that would get you at the same height as you would be standing, and you would still be able to do your job. If you don't disclose to your employer why you need this chair, then they're not going to get it for you, obviously. They're just going to think that you're blowing smoke and just trying to be lazy. But by disclosing to them the nature of why you need the chair because of a diagnosis of fatigue, then you are then protected under the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA. An employer has to make um, steps on their behalf in order to help you do your job. that's one kind of disclosure. Um, so let's see. You know, mental health is one that really struggles. The idea of disclosing a mental illness to an employer after being hired is already contentious, let alone during applications and interviews. It's very important to weigh both sides of the issues before making a decision on whether or not to reveal a mental health issue during the hiring process. So, why would you not disclose? Let's talk about that briefly. Stigma. There is so much stigma in regards to mental health and behavioral disorders that it's very hard if somebody was going to hear something and they're automatically going to think of the most negative stereotype they have ever seen on TV, and they are going to automatically classify you in that section, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about that. Not every employer is like that, mind you. We here at Goodwill, we are a second chance company, and we do a lot to help individuals who may have those types of diagnoses or issues in their lives. We work through those because we are an understanding and compassionate company, and that's what we strive for, because we know that there is help that can be done. There's ways to work around it, and there's ways to help these people out. Not every employer is as gracious and understanding as that. While there have been improvements in awareness and acceptance, it's certainly not the case in all workplaces. For these reasons alone, it may not be a good idea to disclose a mental illness during the hiring process. There's been studies about employee responsibilities and rights. Found that among 600 people with disabilities, including approximately half with mental illness, a full quarter of respondents in a survey found that they received negative responses to revealing their problems, such as not being promoted, being treated differently, or being bullied. Anxiety disorders is a huge stressor on individuals. In the workplace, and 40% of employees whose stress interfered with their work disclosed the information to their employer. The top reasons are whose stress interfered with their work disclosed the information to their employers. The top reasons: fear a boss would take the news as disinterest in their work, fear of being labeled weak, concern it could affect advancement opportunities, or go in an employee's file. And that's something that, people who hear panic and anxiety disorder just think of this little scared, trembling person who's not going to be able to do any type of job, but that's not true. A lot of people, advocate not disclosing anything to potential employers, because they feel that it's a drawback to getting hired. Some employers will automatically place stigmas on them. That's not necessary. And they just may not have all the information that the employer needs to know. Regardless of whether you decide to disclose or not, the Americans with Disabilities Act provides protection for those with mental health issues. Remember, the ADA was signed into law back in 1990 and provides basic rights for workers with disabilities, including those with a history of psychiatric disability. It means employers can't take actions such as failing to hire, demoting, or denying training opportunities because they believe a qualified applicant or employee might have a psychiatric disability. The law also prevents potential employers from asking questions during an interview about physical or mental illness. You are not required at any point during the interview to disclose your illness history, nor on the job if you so choose. Be prepared, though, that an employer may ask about your ability to perform certain tasks that will touch on issues impacted by mental health, such as high-pressure situations or conflict resolution. Another provision covered by the ADA is the right to accommodations as they don't cause undue hardship for an employer. We just talked about this briefly already. This could mean permission to work from home on some days or the need for a flexible schedule. In order to gain accommodations, you will need to disclose some information about your health to your company. This does not need to be disclosed during the interview process, however, but at any point before there is an issue. The key thing being before there is an issue. You don't want to wait till you've been reprimanded several times before bringing to light something. You want to, make sure that they know ahead of time before the problems start occurring. Um, just scanning my stuff here. So how do you prepare to disclose information about your health to a employer or a boss? Um, well, first you want to assess your employment skills to determine whether you need help from, you know, any kind of outside assistance. Do you need a therapist? Do you need help with a mental health agency? Do you need, you know, an occupational therapist? That would be good. Um, initiating contact, having the interview, describing your disability, negotiating the terms of employment, Oh, sometimes I wish I could edit this. So you've decided that you may want to disclose something to your boss. What would you do? You would identify any potential accommodations you might need during the hiring process or on your first day of work. This is really tough, because you're trying to put your best your best foot forward in a job interview. And, what are you going to do? Explore your feelings about having a mental illness and about sharing that information with others. Remember, you're not being forced to disclose if you don't want to. Um, Research, the employer. This goes into the preparation we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. When you're researching the employers and the jobs that you're interviewing for, can you find information about any of their potential attitudes towards mental illness to help you screen out, unsupportive employers? The internet, it has a wealth of information out there, and chances are, if an employer has a record of being discriminatory towards people with mental health disorders or disabilities, there's going to be information about that on the internet. So then you can also, talk to your job specialist, your employment specialist, your training specialist. All these specialists are here in job coaches to help you steer away from potential employers that could put you in those types of situations. Things that you would look for in your research of employers, have they hired someone with a mental health disability before? Do they personally know someone with a mental illness? What positive or negative experiences have they had in employing someone with a mental illness? Do they show signs, newsletters, posted notices, employee education programs about mental illness that encourage a diverse workforce? Do they have a corporate culture that favors flex time? Do they have mentoring programs? Do they offer telecommuting, flexible benefits, and other programs that help employees work efficiently and well? Here at Work and Community Services, we have a plethora of flyers in regards to mental health and self-care, and checking in on our employees all the time, make sure they're doing well, if they need anything. There's several different services that we offer. So these are all things that we try to offer to our employees, so they know that we're open. If they need to talk about something, we have other individuals that they can talk to if they don't feel comfortable talking to their direct supervisor. Does the job have certain requirements? Is there childcare? Is there high security? What kind of requirements that would put you at a disadvantage if you disclosed your diagnosis? Is it a high stress job? Is it a very physical job where you're lifting stuff out? Is it a hot environment? Some people don't work well in a hot environment. It affects their physical physicality, I guess, in order to get the job done. They could have a heat sensitivity. It could be, diabetic, and you have to drink lots of fluid when you're diabetic and you're working in a hot environment. Otherwise, you're going to have issues that could be serious to your health. So these are things that you want to take into consideration. Um, and then you got to weigh the benefits and risks of disclosure. Do you need to involve an outside agency to get or keep the job? Do you need accommodations or support from your employer? And when would you need this accommodation? Do other people in the company need similar accommodations? And how stressful will it be for you to hide your disability? It's I'm a very open book with a lot of things, and there's certain things that I don't want to divulge, especially here on Facebook and during these live video casts. That's going to be seen by hundreds or thousands of people. But you really gotta know what kind of accommodations the employer either has made before in the past or will do in the future. Um, there should be a track record of that somewhere. Um, and with some of our individuals that we work with, we have specialists that go out and help them, with the job interview process, transport them to do job shadowing and mentoring. So these employers automatically know there's something different about this person, or, and that's looking at it negatively. To look at it positively, they could be like, oh, this dude's special. He's got someone that, drives him all around town to check this stuff out. What's unique about this fellow that can help my company out? But some individuals may feel uncomfortable with that. I know from the past there was in surveys. You do you want to communicate with people that you work with, and one of the things that came up in this survey was someone didn't like the fact that our vehicles say Goodwill on the side of them, because they feel that when people see that Goodwill logo, they automatically assume that there's something wrong with everybody that comes out of that vehicle. And they're not looking at them like a regular person. It's kind of the same concept when you're going to a job interview. If you've got somebody like a job coach or something, you really have to determine whether you're okay with any kind of assumptions that might be brought up in an interview or with talking to a potential employer. And you have control over that as well as an individual. You don't have to, you can give permission to whether you want this job coach to disclose anything about you or not. Or do you want to be the one to do it? So you just gotta, it's all about personal preference, but know that employers can't just come out and ask you in an interview just to bring it back home. I can't, as an interviewer, go, can you work in a high stress situation, or do you flake out on me? Or would you flake out on me, or something like that? Those are things that I couldn't ask. There are certain physical requirements of jobs, like can you lift 50 pounds regularly, or can you lift 10 pounds regularly and on occasion 50 pounds for an 8-hour shift. I don't know if I could do that myself, so I got to decide, do I want to try for this job knowing that I might not be able to lift that all the time, or do I want to be honest about my back and it killing me and not being able to bend over and repeatedly stand up and bend over and stand up, and that's something that really weighs in. I had a job in the past where I had to I was working for a lumber yard as a salesman, inside sales representative. Um, and one of the requirements of the job was that I had to be on my feet all day. I don't know if you guys know me that well, but standing on my feet for 8 hours kills. My back hurt, my feet hurt, my legs hurt. Everything about it hurts. I didn't disclose anything of my medical history because that would have probably disqualified me from getting that job. I knew that I needed a better paying job. I liked the hours. I liked the thought of getting commission and making money. So I didn't disclose what I needed. And I suffered for a good 6 months before I finally had to go out and buy myself a pair of better shoes. And when I found myself a pair of better shoes, oh, it just changed my world completely. And it was easier. But then you got to slowly work into it. I did that job for 3 years. That was 3 years standing on my feet for 8 hours at a time. That was hard. Granted, that's not a mental health issue, but that is something that you would need to consider. It's hard to talk about this stuff without giving a lot of personal information away. So you just have to decide how specific you will be in describing your disability. Use general terms. You can say you have a disability. You can say you have a medical condition or an illness. You can be vague, but use specific terms. You don't have to say. Sorry, I'm trying to read ahead a little bit. You don't have to say, I have bipolar disorder with microaggression disease or something. If that is such a thing, I don't know. I'm just kind of shooting from the head here. So you may say that you may have issues standing for long times, but with an inexpensive job adaptation, I could have, in the interview, I could have said, I'm not sure if I could stand for 8 hours at a time. I will try my best. I have found in the past that when I've been done this, that an employer has provided a certain chair that costs such and such, and I was able to perform well above most of my peers in my job because of that. You can sell it as you need it. You don't have to really just go into too much detail. You want to try to focus on the skills you do have and that make you able to perform the main duties of the job. What are your qualifications? What are your technical skills? What are your general work skills? Your employer is going to try, or the interviewer is going to try to trip you up, and they're going to ask you the same question maybe 3 different ways to try to get you to slip up and reveal something. It's not always the most ethical thing to do, but I'm going to prepare you for worst case scenario. And you may find it helpful to prepare yourself a script ahead of time to read from. They list one example. I have, a mental health disorder that I am recovering from. Currently I can blank whatever skills are required to do the main duties of the job, but sometimes insert functional limitations, interfere with my ability to do, blank, 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 that you may have trouble performing. It helps if I have, and you can list out a name, list out the names of the specific accommodations you need. I work best when, you know, list your best case, your best accommodations there. You can also add the following information. Sometimes you might see some sort of symptoms or behaviors associated with the symptoms. When you see that, you can have some action steps that your employer can do to help you. Then, you give the number of your employment specialist or doctor. I wouldn't give them your therapist information. That would be something maybe after you're hired. For any information that you might need about my ability to handle the job. So it's really just all about you're treading a very thin line between what an employer is going to find helpful and what they're not. So there's a list of the top 10 things to not disclose during an interview, and that I found that was very helpful in reading it. And this was from Forbes magazine. And this just covers the whole gamut. It's not just in regards to disability and mental health. And that's something that when you see Goodwill, that's something you might automatically jump to. But, and these are things that we tend to talk about with some of our individuals because they're not going to think about it. And I want everybody to think about these things is, financial issues. It's easy to slip up and say something that, your reduced financial state, as they put it, and knowing that it's going to make you seem desperate. And it could hurt you too, because, you could be working at a fast food restaurant or interviewing for a job at a fast food restaurant, and knowing that the position is going to be cashier. Well, as an employer, and I hear somebody is disclosing that they have financial issues, I'm going to be pretty leery about hiring this person who's going to spend the majority of their time taking other people's money. Yes, cash registers are counted daily, but the idea of theft, the seed that you might be dishonest because you're struggling out of work, is going to throw up a huge red flag for me, and I'm not going to go out on a limb for you. Relationship issues. Job seekers are used to explaining their situations by telling the personal stories behind their job search. Like, I moved here with my husband in 2013, but he lost his job and I was supporting both of us, and then we got divorced last summer, just around the time I got laid off. There's lots of empathetic people in the world that's going to feel for your situation, but your personal life is not really something that you want to divulge too much in a job interview. That might be something that once you build up a rapport with your boss or a coworker that you can talk about. But sometimes, I've heard some crazy stories in job interviews and about their personal struggles and relationship issues, and I'm screaming in my head like, why are you telling me this? Because it has no basis other than I don't know if I want that person on my team. So relationship issues is definitely something that you don't want to bring up in an interview. Legal troubles, if you're having some unpleasantness with law enforcement or any other kind of legal difficulty, you definitely don't want to bring up in an interview. You don't want to say, I'm being sued by my ex-partners, but I'm sure I'll prevail. It's not a statement that will build anybody's confidence in you. So leave your legal situations completely out of a job interview conversation. Illness or injury. If you took time off of work because you were sick or you got injured, you don't have to disclose that in the job interview. And this was something I never thought about doing anyways. You can tell the interviewer that you took a personal sabbatical. And, it's something that is every person's privilege to do whenever they want and can afford to. And you don't have to go into any detail as to why you took some time off. None at all. You can let the interviewer assume that, maybe you made enough money at your last job that you could afford to take a break. I wish I could afford to take a break like that. That would be kind of awesome. Uh, but, no, and if you're sick for a long time and there's some time off of work, your resume is not necessarily going to show that. You don't have to put that down in a job application. The employer just doesn't need to know. Family plans. It is against the law for an interviewer to ask if you are pregnant. If you bring it up, we'll talk about it, but by law, an interviewer can't, look at a person and say, "Are you pregnant?" Because that's discriminatory. Yeah, there might be some job qualifications that you need to be able to meet. There could be some physicality, there could be safety issues. You may go into a work environment where the potential harm of either falling or getting kicked or punched in the stomach would make any pregnant person pause. But, if you are doing any kind of hormone treatments, if you're looking to get pregnant, there's really no need to bring any of that up during the interview. Those are your personal family plans, and those are between you and your family. Unpleasant departure from your last job. Um, we had an interview, and this I still chuckle about it because of the way the person talked about it. Uh, but he really went above and beyond disparaging his current employer in his interview, which is funny because I used to work there and I knew some of the individuals he was talking about. And we had asked him, how much time or when he could start working. And he said, "I could start working right away. I'm not even going to give him 2 weeks notice." And he kind of did this little weird chuckle. Um, you know, don't bring that up in the job interview because you're only making yourself look bad at that point. Um, and we want to, keep, the question might come up, why did you leave your last job? Or, which is, I think, one of our questions that we ask. And you could just say, we agreed to part ways. The relationship had run its course, or I was ready for something new. You don't want to say, "Oh, I couldn't stand them," or "they couldn't stand me, and we just had to, end this horrible thing," or "I fought with my coworkers all the time," or "I hated my boss." Those are things you really don't want to bring up. Any kind of unpleasant departure, you can say, "I got fired from my last job because I mouthed off to somebody." You don't want to bring that up in a job interview. Religious affiliation, unless there's a very specific reason to share your religious affiliation at a job interview, um, which, I'm not uncomfortable with the fact that if a company is going to ask me what religion I follow because the company is formed around a particular religious tradition, and they only hire members of that religion, to me, that would be discriminatory practices anyways. But generally, religion and politics are two things that, you definitely don't want to talk about in a job interview. And you should really be discouraged from talking about those at work with coworkers anyways. Um, you don't know what the interviewer's religion or political view is, so you kind of want to steer clear of them completely. Oh, I'm sorry. Not enough coffee yet. Manageable commitments. It's always fun to talk about our hobbies and uh, activities we like to do outside of work. As a job seeker, you may want to be sensitive to the risk of sharing too much about your most important pastimes, especially if they sound like time consuming activities that will consume much of your energy. Um, a potential interviewer, or manager might not understand that you can balance your job and your role as the president of the local Dachshund Rescue organization very well. Um, but if your commitments outside of work are manageable without any special scheduling limitations, there's no point in mentioning them in your job interview. It just sounds, that you're just a very busybody. Do I want a busybody who, would make me feel like they're not going to show up to work on time? I don't know. Uh, Complaints about former bosses. Uh, Resist any urge you may feel at a job interview to bash, badmouth, belittle, criticize, satirize, or smear any past boss, no matter how evil the boss was. Um, this is where your friends come in handy. They can listen and laugh with you, and as you tell your bad boss stories, but they're not there for airing at a job interview. No matter how friendly the interviewer is, you don't need to go into such details as to why your boss was a jerk. Because I wouldn't hire you because you're saying that about your former or current boss, and what are you going to say about me when I hire you and I start asking you to do your job? It's not going to be pretty. And one thing that, I suffer from, which, we've laughed about this over the last couple of weeks. How can I stop myself from babbling at a job interview or rambling? I like rambling better than babbling. Oh, man, this is a really bad video today. I apologize, folks. Uh, a lot of job seekers, find it helpful to get into character for a job interview the night before. They find a quiet place to sit and think about the job and the people they'll be meeting likely, and they step into that character for the scene that they play with, with the job interviewer the next day. You may find an interesting topic that you want to do, and you're just going to start going on and on and on about stuff, and before you know it, you're telling your dragon slaying stories, and you're just, oh my goodness, going so far off away from what the interview is going. You want to have clear, concise answers. Not everything needs to be an essay length story. Um, huh. So we'll wrap this up and then we'll get into our interview questions. But it said a final interview tip is to tire yourself out. Getting winded and out of breath does wonders for your nerves, your comfort level, and your tone of voice. So if you can find a staircase near your interview location, run up and down a flight of stairs 3 or 4 times. If I did that, I would not be able to talk and I'd be so winded it would be crazy. I can get what this Forbes article is talking about. If you feel like you're just going to sit and you're just going to ramble off a bunch of information because you're so full of energy and you really want, you're very passionate about this job. So what's one thing you can do is tire yourself out a little bit. Go for that run. Well, me, I saunter more than I run. Do something that's going to take some of the energy out. Walk around the block a couple times before your interview. Try not to get too sweaty when you do it. Do a workout in the morning that kind of pumps you up a little bit, but get you going. And just really try to find an outlet so you don't have all that nervous energy with you when you go into an interview. All right, so enough of that stuff. So let's talk about some interview questions. I came up with a whole big list of stuff, and maybe I'll post it as a article or something here in a time being, so that way you can practice at home. But let's kind of just, I'll ask you some questions, and you can practice at home using this video. So it'd be like a practice job interview. So, one of the first things an interviewer might say is, tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do you want to work here? How would your peers describe you? What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Why do you want to work here? You know what? I already asked that question. Why do you want to leave your current job? Have you ever been fired? Think about that question because you don't have to disclose that. You know, that's one of those trick questions. Let's see. Somebody chimed in. I want to work in an environment that allows me to grow, also have a glass ceiling, also not have a glass ceiling. I like that. All right. What else do we got here? What are your goals in life? What has been your most significant achievement? How would your last boss describe you? What were the responsibilities of your last position? This is a good question to reference your resume on, so that way your answers match what you put down on your resume. Let's see, when leaving one job and going to another, should you put 2 week notice in when you acquire your new profession or put in when you are mentally done with the job? Good question. Um, you should definitely wait until you have a job offer from the new company that you want to go work for and then put in a 2 week notice. You definitely don't want to just mentally check out from a job and leave because, you'd be burning a bridge. Yeah, this job might have been horrible, but it's going to look even worse for you if you just walk away from it. You want to try to do it correctly, no matter how miserable the experience is, and kind of stick with it because that's going to help you in the long run. Good question. Well, let's see here. What else we got? Ooh, this was one I got a long time ago. Can you describe a time when your work was criticized? Have you ever been on a team where someone was not pulling their weight? And how did you handle it? Give me an example of a time you did something wrong. How did you handle it? That's one of those tricky questions. You really got to be careful on how you answer that one. You know, it could be, I like to reference, um, like there was one time when I was asked this question, I referenced a bad experience I had with a customer. Um, so I list out my mistake that I did in handling that customer appropriately, and then I talk in and include how I learned and grew from that experience and how it made me a better person. So I give them the little tidbit of the negative aspect of what happened, but then I build into the positive on how I grew from that. Question: does it help to research the company you're interviewing for? It does help to research the company you're interviewing for. You really want to know what this company's all about. And a lot of companies these days have a huge social media presence, so you can tell a lot about a company before you even get there. Um, so it's very, very important to know everything you can about the company before you even go into that interview. Because, if it's not a sales company or a customer service company, me telling them a situation on how I handled a learning experience with customer service isn't going to help shine a light on my skills. Um, how about tell me a time where you had to deal with conflict on the job? Did you have a certain interaction with a peer? Was it your boss? You really got to think on how you would answer a question like that. What salary are you looking for? I know I gave you the creepy eyes on that one. How would you describe your work style? Anybody know what I mean by work style? Are you a laid back worker? Or are you aggressive coworker? Are you somebody who sits in the middle? Are you a lead from the front? Are you a follower? Are you self motivated? These are the types of things you want to consider when answering that type of question. Tell me about your proudest achievements. Seems like a simple enough question. This is one that might get you rambling, so you really got to think about what you're going to say and not ramble too long on it. Let's see. What do you ultimately want to become in life? Now, to make sure when you answer this one that it has something to do with the job you're interviewing with, because, you know, if someone's coming to interview for a position to work for me, I don't want someone who's going to say, well, my 5-year plan is I'm going to be such and such, and it has nothing to do with the field that you're working in. So, do I really want to take a chance on this person? I don't know. Um, what negative thing would your last boss say about you? That ties back into the question we had about leaving one job and going to another. What would that boss say about you? What do you like to do for fun? Again, we talked about this one a little bit with that Forbes article in regards to, talking about your hobbies. Keep them simple. Don't say a bunch of stuff, You don't want to give the appearance that you've got such a busy schedule that work is an afterthought. How would you handle stress and pressure? describe yourself. I don't like this question because I hate talking about myself. But it could be one that you're asked. It's kind of a behavioral interview question. Is your interviewer is trying to get to know this picture of you that you're describing. How would you deal with an angry or upset customer? And this is a really good question for critical thinking. Being able to think on your feet and handle the pressure of an upset customer. Are you going to flake? Do you know the right things to say to a customer? How would you be able to diffuse the situation and help that customer have a great experience in a store, whether it's fast food or retail? What motivates you? List 5 words that describe your character. That's a tricky one. What will you miss about your last job? And this one, we'll end on this one because I just want you to think about the answer to this one and maybe leave a comment on the video here. Was there a person in your career who really made a difference? Got a few. One I remember the most. He was my mentor when I worked at KB Toys, and real no nonsense. You knew exactly where you stood with him. Um, Very firm, but he was fair. He would call you out if you made a mistake. He would show you how to fix it, and then the understanding was you don't make that mistake again. There was a softness about him in which he wanted his employees to grow. So he constantly tested you and guided you along the way to be better at your job. So, who is that person to you? And how have they helped you grow? So, thank you all for joining us today. That's it for my time. I will see you all tomorrow morning at 10. And we will do part 4 of Interview Basics next week, in which we will, I don't remember what the next topic was on that one. I apologize. It's been a week. So just be prepared, and we will finish up this section, and then we'll move on to starting to build a resume. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.